New York, and tonight Donald Trump finds himself surrounded in a tightening circle. The number of those he can trust, according to a member of his own family, is drastically shrinking. Angry and isolated, the president's fixated on those around him who might have let the truth slip out about his presidency's incapacity. And today, the president's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., told ABC News that his father's circle of trust is shrinking.
I think there are people in there that he can trust. It's a much smaller group than I would like it to be.
Who do you trust?
Well, I'll keep that to myself.
And they're not family?
Well, obviously, yeah, I'm talking outside of family. I think that one goes without saying.
Well, today, as Bob Woodward's book goes on sale across the country, it's becoming more difficult for the president to escape the emerging image that he's an incompetent chief executive who poses a danger to national security. And those revelations, along with that anonymously published op-ed by a senior official, have already fueled an atmosphere of suspicion in the White House. According to the latest from the Associated Press, quote, Donald Trump continues to insist privately that he wants leakers punished. A source familiar with the president's thinking says that when it comes to the anonymous op-ed, Trump has continued to focus on identifying and firing the author, even as some advisors have urged him to let the matter go. Meanwhile, with the publication of his book, America's most trusted reporter Bob Woodward is warning the American people that they can no longer be dismissive of the president's behavior. As he told NPR, I am convinced that people need to wake up and not kind of pretend this is just politics or this is partisan. Well, similarly, Woodward said in a New York Times podcast that his reporting backs up the notion that this administration is teetering on the brink of collapse.
You basically say that the administration is teetering on a catastrophe or a collapse.
Well, I provide the evidence of it, and it's just supported by fact, I believe. It's not a partisan position. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans or left, right. It's about the stability of the country, and it's not something you can read and feel comforted by.
I'm joined by Jonathan Lemire, White House reporter for the Associated Press. Elise Jordan is a contributor at Time Magazine and MSNBC political analyst as well. And Zerlina Maxwell, of course, director of progressive programming for Sirius XM. Thank you. I want to start with Jonathan on your reporting inside the White House. Who does he still trust besides blood relatives, the people he'll pardon eventually?
Sure. It's a very shrinking circle, as Don Jr. said in that interview you just played. This is a president who all along has been somewhat suspicious of what he calls the deep state, right? These career bureaucrats he feels like who never supported him during the campaign and who have tried to undermine him since taking office. But in recent months, and particularly in the last couple of weeks, in the light of the op-ed and the Woodward book, he is now looking at people around him, some of his advisors in the West Wing. He gave an interview the other day to a TV station out in Montana, I believe, when he was out there for a campaign rally, in which he candidly said that he sometimes goes into meetings and looks around the room to see who's there before he starts talking. And it's this sense of paranoia that has really permeated.
Is it paranoia or is it reasonable suspicion? You know, after 9/11, a lot of people got on airplanes and looked around to see who else was on the plane because they didn't want to have anybody hijackers on that plane or anybody that might be one. Is the president, you think, covering him as you do every day, is he right to suspect the people around him are ratting him out and saying, behind the camera with nobody watching, this guy's not competent to run the country? I'd worry about those people because they're probably telling the truth as they see it.
Sure. I think it's a little bit of both. I think there is a degree of paranoia. But of course, this is an administration that has been beset by leaks more than most of his predecessors. And we know that he is obsessed with finding him. And as you just read from our reporting, over the last couple of days, he's remained really fixated on this. He wants to figure out who the op-ed author is. He wants that person fired. He's even suggested going to the Department of Justice to sort of activate the mechanics of the federal government to try to figure this out. People around him are trying to talk him off that, suggesting that, look, there's no crime committed here. Certainly this is a personnel issue. You're right to want this person fired, but there's no suggestion that state secrets or classified information was disclosed.
Who's he trust besides blood relatives? Who's he trust? Does he trust Kellyanne?
I think
Does he trust Kelly?
I think it varies by the day. I think largely those people, yes, he still does, but every day, there's the only people in the building who have his, or in his orbit, who have his full 100% trust are his relatives, are his family. And people around him are trying to get him off this, to focus on something else, focus on the midterm,
Okay.
focus on the economy, and now focus on the storm.
Elise, how do you run a country when you don't trust anybody to do what you're telling them to do and you think they're going around your back?
And the only people you trust are your family members who are
This is
incompetent.
Romanov. I've been
and
saying
have
it's the
terrible
Romanovs for months
political-
now. He's running it like a royal family. He only trusts blood relatives, and they're the ones who'll end up on his way out the door pardoning.
Well, Chris, look at already the trouble that his blood relatives have gotten him into. The worst decision of the campaign, arguably, was Don Jr. meeting with a Kremlin-associated lawyer at
Up
Trump
at Trump
Tower.
Tower.
And then you look at the decision to make Mike Flynn national security advisor was pushed by Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And then Jared Kushner pushed Donald Trump to fire Jim Comey and said that it would be politically palatable to Democrats. These are the most destructive political decisions, and they were pushed by the Trump family.
Okay, Zerlina, here's your chance. He only trusts people that he shouldn't trust. He puts Jared as his viceroy for the Middle
Yeah.
East. And what is his knowledge of the Middle East and that part of the world?
Nothing.
He puts his daughter, who everybody
Right.
sort of likes, Ivanka, in charge of the sun, in charge of what climate we're having. I mean, it's insane. She's going to protect us, we were told in the beginning, against climate change,
Right.
against global warming. These are insane decisions.
Well, essentially what it demonstrates is that he doesn't really care about the underlying policy. He doesn't know anything about the policy, and he doesn't care about the outcomes and how that impacts people. Because if you put Ivanka Trump in charge of climate change, you're basically saying, I don't take climate change seriously, and I don't actually care because you haven't put an expert in place. And I think in terms of when it goes to the family, yes, he's setting this up. So those are the folks that he's going to pardon. But the reason why the circle of people he trusts is so small is because the loyalty goes in one direction. You're not going to have a lot of friends if you can't be trusted to be loyal to your friends.
Oh, he's thrown a few under the
and your
bus. Anyway,
allies.
two former Trump officials who figure prominently in Woodward's book spoke out today trying to protect their connection with him. In his statement, former Staff Secretary Rob Porter said, I am struck by the selective and often misleading portrait it paints of the president and his administration. He continues, the suggested materials were stolen from the president's desk to prevent his signature misunderstands how the White House document review process works. Well, that was wormy. Former economic advisor Gary Cohn said in a statement, this book does not accurately portray my experience at the White House, but he declined to cite any specific inaccuracies in the book. Axios reported yesterday that the president was, quote, privately furious at both former officials. However, here's what he had to say about them when asked today.
Do you believe Rob Porter and Gary Cohn's denials today?
Well, you shouldn't be talking about that right now because it doesn't matter. But I really appreciate their statement. Their statement was excellent. And they both sent out beautiful, which shows that the book is just a piece of fiction. Thank you very much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.